Welcome back. In this lesson I'll cover the development of comic strips in the United States of America and their importance to the development of superheroes. By the end of this lesson you'll have a good understanding of the development of comic strips as a medium, the importance of distinctive characters in many comic strips, the importance of mixing images and text in the comics medium. The development of comic strips as a medium. In the last lesson I noted that the superheroes we'll be talking about are American superheroes. In this lesson, when I talk about comic strips, I'm talking about American comic strips. Many countries have comic strips or versions of them. Sometimes Americans think that comic strips are uniquely American. I'm sorry, that is not true. But comic strips of a particular sort developed in America from the mid-1890s, and these strips eventually led to superhero comic books. Understanding how this happened helped us understand why comic book superheroes took the form they did when they first appeared. Key point 1. Two men and their newspapers played an important role in the development of comic strips in America. Joseph Pulitzer's New York World from 1883 and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal from 1896. The New York World. Joseph Pulitzer, after whom the Pulitzer Prize is named, bought the New York World in 1883. He launched it on a course of publishing sensational news. It was the TMZ or the Daily Mail of its day in a certain way. In 1894, the New York World began to publish a Sunday humor supplement in color. On May 5, 1895, the World published At the Circus in Hogan's Alley, a large single-panel comic in color drawn by Richard Alcott. Many people incorrectly think this is the first comic strip and the first appearance of the Yellow Kid. It is neither. For a start, look at the image. It's a single panel. Second, the Yellow Kid, who in this comic is dressed in a blue nightshirt, had appeared in other comics earlier. At this stage, the kid had no name. But this was important because this figure, who became known as the Yellow Kid, and as best anybody can tell was named the Yellow Kid by readers, demonstrates that a comic strip figure could capture the attention of a reading audience. This was important because newspaper owners wanted to sell as many copies of a newspaper as they could. The more copies of a newspaper they sold, the more money they made. Not just by sales, but for the rate they could charge for advertising. People bought the New York World to read the comic that had the Yellow Kid. The Yellow Kid showed that a distinctive character could help sell newspapers. The kid's nightshirt, generally colored yellow, made him distinctive. So much so that he was named after his costume. The Yellow Kid was so popular, all sorts of products used him as a form of a brand name. So you could buy Yellow Kid cigars and Yellow Kid ginger wafers and many more products. Key point 2. The Yellow Kid is a distinctive character. Is a distinctive character in a distinctive costume. The Yellow Kid was such a successful character that when William Randolph Hearst wanted to compete with Pulitzer's New York World, he decided he needed the Yellow Kid. The story goes that Hearst offered Richard Alcott twice the salary Pulitzer was paying him, and not surprisingly, Alcott left the New York World for the New York Journal. I mean, twice the salary. Who wouldn't do that? Well, sometimes not a good idea. But the New York World hired another artist, George Lukes, who continued to draw the Yellow Kid for that newspaper. Alcott, Hearst, and the New York Journal could not stop them because Alcott had not copyrighted the Yellow Kid. He tried, but failed on a technicality. He submitted one drawing, but the rules required 2 copies. The law was different in 1896 than it is now. Alcott did not own the rights to his character, the Yellow Kid, so anybody could use the name and the visual image. This is to do with copyright and trademark laws, and we'll deal with this in Module 7 of this course. Key point 3. A distinctive character could be used to sell comics and products, but you need to make sure you own the rights to the character or anybody could use the character. The importance of mixing images and text in the comics medium. There are conventions we might take for granted when reading superhero comics, and these took shape in comic strips in the late 1890s and early 1900s. When I say they took shape, that doesn't mean these were the first time such things were used, but rather this is when they became the standard way in America of telling stories using comics. These included panels, word balloons, and motion lines. Let's look at 2 early comic strips to understand this point. This is a strip called The Yellow Kid Studies Music. It was in the New York Journal, February 7, 1897. The strip is organized in panels. The panels are numbered to help readers know which order to read them in. You can see the numbers here, and so on, through to 6. Look at the sheet music. The artist Richard Alcott showed how badly the Yellow Kid is playing by having the sheet music distort and eventually fall off the page. You can see it starting to come off here. He let us see sound by having it come from the trumpet. You can see that sound a little bit here and more clearly there. In panel 5, the cat goes into a whirling motion, and this is displayed in motion lines. See this? And these kind of lines here. These are called motion lines. Throughout, Alcott uses the kid's nightshirt to display the kid's thoughts. So you can see here what he's thinking, and again here, and right at the end also there. Just as we all had to learn how to read written material, at some point we all learned how to read comics. Here's another comic strip. It's called Cupid's Everlasting Jolly. It was in the New York Journal, December 30, 1900. See the mix of word balloons and narrative text in boxes. So word balloons there, and then underneath we have this kind of narrative text. Using word balloons to show characters' speech and thought only became a convention in 1901 in comic strips. The narrative text boxes shown here are not much used in comic strips, but they are used extensively in comic books. We will see examples of this more later in the course. This brings us to key point 4. The formal properties of comics, panels, word balloons, motion lines, and narrative boxes all became the conventions of comics in America in newspaper comic strips. This is the end of this lecture. This lecture has 4 key points. Review your notes and go back over the video lesson to ensure you have those 4 key points noted. Coming up next, Lesson 1.3, Origins, the development of pulps and science fiction.